Almost everyone starts income the same way. They assume testing requires building, and building requires commitment. A website, a brand, a product. Some visible structure that signals this is real now. Because of that assumption, people usually don't test until after they've already invested time, money, and identity into something they don't yet understand. But income systems don't begin with construction. They begin with contact. Before something deserves to exist, it has to be encountered. Before something deserves to be protected, it has to touch reality. Income isn't created by effort alone. It emerges from interaction. Something meets someone and something moves. Testing income is not the act of launching. It's the act of placing value into motion and watching what actually happens. Not what you hope will happen. Not what feels logical. What people really do when something appears in their world. Do they pause? Do they try to use it? Do they ignore it? Do they come back to it? Do they reshape it? If nothing moves when something is offered, no amount of structure will make it work. Structure only amplifies motion that already exists. It doesn't generate it. This is why testing income without building a business isn't avoidance. It's precision. It's the discipline of separating signal from imagination before imagination hardens into form. A business isn't the smallest unit of income. A transaction is. And a transaction isn't money. It's movement. Someone notices. Someone engages. Someone takes a step they didn't have to take. Someone gives attention, effort, or trust. Someone experiences a shift. Testing income means introducing small, reversible signals into the world and paying attention to how reality responds. Most people think they're testing when they're actually protecting. They keep ideas private. They polish them. They refine them in isolation. They talk about them instead of letting them meet anyone. But systems don't respond to refinement. They respond to friction. They reveal themselves when something touches someone and the two don't perfectly fit. Testing means letting something encounter the world while it's still light enough to change easily. Before explanations form around it, before identity attaches to it, before improvement becomes defense. The real question is never whether an idea is good. The real question is whether it causes movement when it meets a person. Do people lean in without being pushed? Do they take next steps without being guided? Do they adapt it, misuse it, resist it, or return to it? Those reactions aren't noise. They're the system expressing itself. That's why testing income isn't market research. It's behavioral listening. A simple page can test income. A single message can test income. A shared document, a short walkthrough, a small tool, or a single conversation can test income. The form is almost irrelevant. What matters is whether behavior shifts when the signal appears. If nothing changes on the other side of what you offer, that isn't failure. It's information. It tells you what the current state of movement actually is. Businesses consume time. Tests produce clarity. A system builder avoids building containers too early because containers change behavior. They introduce expectations. They create politeness. They add distance. Once something is labeled a business, people stop reacting naturally. They become cautious. They become evaluative. They perform instead of move. Testing income strips that away. It removes everything that isn't necessary for exchange and asks a simple question: does anything still try to happen? There's also a difference that matters here, and most people blur it. There's interest, and there's effort. Effort is what people give when persuaded. Interest is what people give when something already fits. Income grows out of the second. Testing income isn't about convincing anyone. It's about noticing alignment. You're not trying to manufacture demand. You're trying to detect where it already exists in some unfinished form. That's why effective tests often look unimpressive. They're small, quiet, easy to miss. A link offered at the right moment. A short resource inside a living conversation. A narrow solution to a friction people are already experiencing. They don't demand attention. They attach to it. A test does its job when it reduces uncertainty, not when it produces revenue. Money at small scale is noisy. One transaction can be chance. A handful can be novelty. What matters is whether patterns start forming, who shows up, how they arrive, what they do without instruction, where they hesitate, where they leave, what they keep asking for. Those shapes tell you what kind of system is possible. This is why early income systems rarely look like businesses. They usually look like paths. A next step someone was already trying to take. A small bridge between confusion and clarity. A shortcut people wish existed. They tend to live inside other systems at first. They ride existing attention. They don't ask people to reorganize their lives. They simply make one movement easier. Testing income without building a business is really about not confusing form with function. A business is a container. Income is a flow. You test the flow before you build the container. Where does attention already gather? Where do questions repeat? Where are people already spending energy awkwardly? Where are they already trying to solve something poorly? Those are not ideas. Those are openings. When income is tested well, it rarely feels like selling. It feels like interruption. Something useful appears where nothing existed before. Someone experiences less confusion, less delay, less friction. And because something has been reduced, behavior starts reorganizing around it. That reorganization is what you're watching. This stage is uncomfortable for a lot of builders because it removes distance. You're close to people, close to misunderstanding, close to resistance, close to relief. There's no abstraction layer yet, no brand shield, no automation buffer. You see the system while it's still honest. That closeness isn't inefficiency, it's literacy. It teaches you what deserves to be kept, what needs to be removed, what wants to be strengthened, and what should never be scaled. The moment you build too early, your posture changes. You start explaining instead of observing, defending instead of listening, improving presentation instead of structure. And slowly, the signals that would have shaped the system get replaced by opinions. Testing income keeps you unattached. You're not trying to be right. You're trying to see clearly. Good tests stay small. They stay cheap. They end easily. They aren't designed to grow. They're designed to reveal where growth would naturally want to happen. When a test produces repeatable movement, you haven't found a product. You've found a corridor, a direction people are already moving. Corridors are what systems are built around. A corridor is simply a transition people are already trying to make, from something they have to something they want. Your role isn't to invent that direction. It's to notice it and make passage easier. Testing income is the practice of mapping those transitions before you imagine infrastructure. This is why resilient income doesn't begin with ownership. It begins with participation. You step into flows that already exist. You introduce a small piece of order. You observe what reorganizes. And only when movement becomes consistent does building start to make sense. Not because building creates income, but because income has already shown you where structure belongs. When you learn to test without building, risk shrinks, time compresses. You stop guessing what might work and start responding to what is already working at a very small scale. Every experiment becomes a conversation with reality. And reality is far more accurate than any plan. Systems that last aren't invented. They're recognized. Eventually, something continues even when you stop touching it. People return. They expect it. They tell others. They move through the same path without being pushed. At that point, you're no longer testing income. You're stewarding a living flow. And when you finally decide to build, you're not trying to make income happen. You're giving structure to something that is already happening. That's where systems stop being projects and start becoming environments.